Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sage Live. It's August 2023, and today we're gonna hear from our interns from this summer, interns from the Sage Internship program, and we have a special guest also from another program that's gonna talk about her experience. So, welcome, everyone. Before we start, let me briefly explain what the Sage journey is. All of you participated to the summer camp for SAGE, and that's the first step of the SAGE journey. The SAGE journey program has the mission to inspire and encourage students like you to explore STEM careers for their future. And we do this by offering summer camps, internship, professional growth session, and many opportunity to connect with professionals who care about you and your future. Remember, there's one thing that is very important every year since you participated to the summer camp is to fill the follow-up questionnaire. This is the only thing that we ask you to make sure that we can guarantee a summer camp for every year to the other students that come after you. So the follow-up questionnaire is gonna come out at the end of August. Please remember to fill it out and encourage other students other SAGE alumni to fill it out as well. So SAGE Live, like this event, is part of the SAGE journey. We are a community, we like to stay in touch, so this is one way to stay in touch. And this is an online gathering of students who have attended SAGE or who have applied to the summer camp and are curious about the next step in the SAGE journey. It's a time to reconnect. It is held monthly via Zoom, and the topic that are covered are relevant to your journey. It's career related, like how to write a resume, how to prepare for an interview. And then there are other exciting topics like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Remember, September 2023 is about, SAGE Live is gonna be about scholarship and college application. While October is gonna be internship available in 2024 summer in every national lab that run the SAGE camp. So there are 6 national labs: SLAC, Berkeley, Livermore, Oak Ridge, Fermilab, Los Alamos. And there will be also Brookhaven soon. So there's gonna be a lot of people speaking about internship opportunity at the national lab. So September and October are two important appointments. So today is a unique SAGE Live because we don't have one speaker, we have a panel of speakers, and we will hear their story. They are SAGE alumni that spent their summer at the National Lab and worked with scientists, engineers, physicists, or work in other fields in the National Lab, and they're going to tell us about their experience. Are we ready? We have a really long lineup. Pay attention, ask a question at the end of their talk. They really look forward to really talk with you and connect. Okay, our first speaker is Andrea. Yeah, are you connected? Are you here? Here, how are you? Here you go. I cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Share your screen and here you go.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Andrea Albert, and I am from a small town in northern New Mexico. And this summer I spent it at Los Alamos National Laboratory doing a SAGE summer internship. Let's see if it's gonna go to the next slide. Okay, a little bit about me. I'm 17 years old. I attend a small school called Waukee Valley High School, and I'm going to be a senior this year. Some of the colleges that I look to attend are Berkeley, Davis, Texas A&M, Colorado State University, and UNM. And then some of the majors that I might want to major in, I'm sure this will change in the future, is biomedicine, biomedical engineering, biophysics, medical physics, or just biosciences in general. Some other things I like to do on my free time are I play basketball, soccer, and I like to run. And I show steers in 4-H. So those are a few pictures of me doing things I like to do outside of schoolwork and learning new things. So this summer, I had the opportunity to go up to Llano and work with the thermonuclear physics group. And my mentor was Mr. Tim Wong, and he was a great mentor, and I really enjoyed it this summer. What I did was image analysis of proton radiographs. So I used Python programming to analyze specific images and do different math on these images. In figure 1 to the right, you can see the laser facility where these images were taken from, and that's figure 1 is the laser itself, and then figure 2 is the laser facility. And then just to show you, everyone's seen an x-ray. So in figure 4, that's an x-ray of like a hand that doctors take. And in figure 3, you can see a proton radiograph, which is the images I learned this summer. So I found it interesting that there's many ways to take like different x-rays. And so the analysis I'm going to be discussing today is image registration, edge detection, and lineouts. Let's see. Okay, so these are a little bit of my projects in detail. To the left is image registration, and image registration is the aligning of images to create a single stacked image. So if you've ever seen like people have like their face in the center of the screen and then they align like the background to make sure like their face is in the same spot, but the background is changing as like they travel and stuff. That's basically the same thing I did with these images of the proton radiographs, except I lined up the shots and the grids to make sure that they're easier to analyze for all the scientists that try to analyze these images. And then in the center, I did edge detection on these same images, and edge detection is just an image processing technique of identifying the edges of an image. This can be used when you're trying to pull out different specific data. So if you're just trying to pull out like the background information, then you know exactly where you can take out different edges. And then the final thing I did this summer was my lineouts. So lineouts are just ways scientists use to get data out of different images. So for my lineouts, I graphed the grayscale values of the specific line in an image. So above you see a proton radiograph, and there's a red line drawn through there. And let's see. And this is that line. So on the y-axis, you have the grayscale values, and then on the x, you have the pixel numbers. So you can kind of see as you proceed through the graph how where the grid is. So the grid is kind of like where all those large peaks are, which I found interesting that you can get numbers out of an image, which I didn't know quite that was possible, but I guess it is. So that's how scientists learn and do their calculations. My summary is the achievements I did this summer is I made up a velocity script, an image registration script, an edge detection script, lineout script, and I got to go all over the laboratory and see different things that people are doing, which was like quite interesting because I think it opened my eyes to say, wow, there's a lot of things out there that I can do, not just in this specific field. So I learned a lot about Python basics, which I know is going to help me in the future because now that our world is in technology, a good skill to have is learn how to code. Image processing techniques. The tool belt is what I like to call where I put all my skills into. especially going into like those biosciences, I feel like image processing might be a valuable skill to have. Apply math to real life examples. I know in school sometimes I think, wow, I'm never going to use math ever. But this summer I did, so I was glad that I got to use that in real life. And then, like I said, some of the possibilities of the amount of work I can do in the future and open new doors for the future. So I met lots of amazing people that I think I can always go back to and speak to them, and they most likely will have an opportunity to offer. Let's see. Okay, and then a part of this SAGE internship, we had a few Miss CEO sessions, which was some leadership sessions that I really enjoyed. My favorite trick was to keep track of key metrics. So basically what that means is to keep track of all the things you have to do. So have a to-do list and keep track of your tasks. This helped me stay focused, help prioritize my time, and it actually increased my productivity quite a lot. To the right is just an example of what I used to do or what I'm trying to do my best and keep up with. It was just a simple Excel spreadsheet, and I just filled in all of my different columns, and it kind of helped me say, okay, what I need to complete today and stay on track. So I knew and didn't fall off track, because sometimes I get a little distracted, but I did it with this new to-do list. So yeah. Thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Good job, Maria.
That was great.
Any question for Maria? There's a lot of compliments in the chat, Maria. I want to just clarify, because maybe someone doesn't know. The interns, all the SAGE alumni that participate to an internship at a national lab are invited to attend Miss CEO classes during the summer. It's a leadership class where you learn leadership toolkit and how to be more impactful during your career, time management, networking at your while you're during your internship. So those are skills that you are useful for your career, for your internship, and also for your college years. So this is something that every interns that will has attended, and they're gonna comment on this. There are some questions. There's a question from Elena.
Hi, yeah. I was just wondering, what type of math did you use as part of the internship?
A lot of it was just basic, like algebra. We did different functions of time, and we also used different graphing techniques, like, so the graphing calculator was definitely helpful. But yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now it's time for the next speaker, Annika. Thank you, Rhea.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Annika. Let me share my screen. Whoops. I don't think that's the right one. Okay, give me a sec. I need to... This keeps happening to me. It's really kind of a travesty, but making it work.
While you figure out, there was a question in the chat. There were a couple of questions, Julia, while Annika tries to figure out how to update the thing on the screen.
Yes.
Someone asked, how did you get an opportunity to work at the lab at 17? And I wanted to bring up Lana offers internships for raising seniors. You need to be at least 16 to be an intern. So that's the minimum age. And someone else asked, how long was your internship, Aria?
I started at the end of May, And then I finished on August 10th. So about a month and a week, give or take. Or 2 months and a week, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Annika, you ready to share? Thank you, Anna, for, yes, if you can keep on checking the chat, that would be helpful. Thanks.
All right. Hi again, I'm Annika, and today I'll just be talking a bit about my 2.5-ish months in Building 53 at Slack. So a little bit about myself. My name is Annika. I am a sophomore in college. I attend the University of Wisconsin at Madison, pictured right here, and where I major in religious studies and journalism. So I'd say not the most common pairing, but I still really love it. And then, so this summer I interned in Building 53 at Slack in the Strategic Communications and External Affairs Department. And so my specific internship was under Manuel Ganita, and I was a media relations intern. So my two kind of deadline focused internship projects were a SAGE campaign, which went from my start in early June up until the actual SAGE camp, which happened in the last week of July. And so for that, I put together a media campaign that would try and draw reporters, local reporters, to cover the SAGE camp in order to kind of increase their visibility. And so for that, I researched local science writers, local writers who maybe covered women in STEM, who covered feminism issues in the Bay Area. And I got a bit farther out. We went kind of nationwide near the end. And so I sent out a pitch to those journalists, which went through multiple rounds of revisions to make sure that it was absolutely perfect. And I ended up getting coverage of SAGE in a local publication, a local Menlo Park publication. And then in addition to that, I also interviewed and wrote about 3 SAGE alumni for Symmetry magazine, which is kind of an internal publication. It's a joint publication between Slack and Fermilab. And so they write about particle physics, they write about some of the scientists working there, and now they write about SAGE alumni. And then, so the other campaign I did was a sustainability campaign wherein I met with scientists to determine marketable aspects of their research. So first we had a meeting with the director of the Applied Science Division, Steve Eglash, and we kind of talked about what would be the ideal areas that we think could be interesting for journalists to cover. And so we found 3 of them, and we went and we talked to the scientists there, and we determined, okay, which parts of these, which specific projects could yield media coverage. And we compiled a tip sheet that summarized those 3 initiatives, and we sent it out to journalists. We've already got a little bit of interest from a water journalist that works for Cal Matters, and another journalist that works for a Stanford publication. And so just going to see where that goes in the future, and hopefully Slack's sustainability efforts will be covered. And then the other kind of continuous project that I had throughout the entirety of my internship was a newsletter. And so I went through media mentions of Slack, kind of DOE news, other national labs in the news, and other things like quantum computing. And I compiled that in a weekly newsletter that was sent out across Slack to scientists, management, etc. And so 3 technical skills that I wanted to mention specifically that I gained from this internship was 1, profile writing, because I worked with the editor-in-chief of Symmetry magazine, and she gave me numerous rounds of edits. And I think that was really helpful to my future as ideally a journalist, because she had a lot of good comments. She made a lot of good edits, and I think I improved my profile writing capacity. And then also pitching stories to journalists, because I am often on the receiving end of pitches. So it was interesting and really fascinating to see what goes into composing, sending out pitches. And it was also, I guess as a journalist, you kind of take them for granted sometimes. And so I promise I will not do that anymore now that I know the work that goes into it. And then I also learned my way around Muckrack, which is a kind of database of news articles. And that's how I found all of the media mentions for Slack, for DOE, for all the national labs, and for really any other keyword that you could search for. That's also how you find a lot of the journalists, is that there's a database of them and they have their interest in what they often report on. Okay, and then some soft skills I learned was communication. I mean, working in communications, it's always good to be able to communicate, and majoring in communications is also good to be able to communicate. But I think just generally email writing, talking to people in person, and even just water cooler chat is something that you vastly improve on working in an internship like the one Sage has provided me. And I also learned time management. Sometimes I had a lot of tasks that I was juggling, and so prioritizing them, figuring out, okay, which one of these is urgent, which one of these needs to be completed by the end of the week, which one of these can I maybe, reserve an hour for in the afternoon and make slower progress on. And so that's something that I'll be taking with me into the school year and into the future. And then growth mindset is another thing that I know Sage really prioritizes. And so just the idea that, okay, I am a humanities major, I'm being thrown into a national lab, but that doesn't mean that I don't know anything. And it means that I can learn and grow, and I can understand things if I put my mind to it. And I did. And I'm so excited to go back to my school and explain particle accelerators to everyone. And then professional skills, again, just kind of building relationships, talking with people, asking them about their weekends, things like that, that I guess make you more memorable, or just being friendly around the office. And then debriefing campaigns. This is something that I was actually really nervous about, but that my mentor, Manuel, helped me with, is debriefing the SAGE campaign in front of our team, which was press and publications. And so just kind of finding what you wanted, what you got, summarizing everything, and seeing what we should do next time is another great skill. And then personalizing for specific audiences. I've talked a bit about this already. It's, talking to journalists, saying, oh, I love that story you wrote about X. Here's another similar topic that I hope you would be interested in. And then, yeah, so some of the takeaways, some of the things I learned in the SAGE professional development, the CEO sessions. So don't let limiting beliefs restrict you. Limiting beliefs are kind of preconceived notions that you hold that maybe make you think you can't do something. And so it's the idea that, oh, I'm a journalism major, I have no place at a science lab. But I think one of the big problems that a lot of seniors, freshmen in college, just people in that general area, time of life, think is that once they pick their major, once they pick what they want to study, they're kind of confined to that for the rest of their life. But one major thing that I did learn in this internship is that within STEM, there is a path to communications. Within communications, there is a path to STEM. They're not mutually exclusive. You're not stuck somewhere, and there's always time to kind of find what you love and go into that. And there's always places where things intercross. And
Thank
so
you, Annika. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, and then the other just small thing is follow through with applications. Don't get scared away by words. I almost didn't apply to this internship because there was one section that was called referrals, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just finished one semester of college. I don't have anyone that can give me a referral. But then I actually went into it and it was just, oh, who referred you to this position? And I was like, oh, okay. So I got scared for nothing. So yeah, I think just following through with things. And then, yeah, lastly, just make the effort to talk to people. I really enjoyed this internship because the people I met and the things I learned from them. And so it's very rewarding. So thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very good. Thank you for letting us know your experience. We don't have time for questions, so let's go to Evie. Are you ready to present? Hi, Evie.
Yes. Oh, is there an echo? Can you hear me?
You need to switch off one of the two.
Is that better?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I cannot hear you. One moment. Okay. Are we good?
Yes, we can hear you, Evie.
So, hello. Huh? Can
We
you hear
can
me?
hear you.
Uh-oh. Hello?
Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So, hello, everyone. My name is Evie Hinrichs. I am just turned 17. I did my whole internship being 16, actually, to be a senior at Los Alamos High School. And I had the honor of doing a Lanel internship this summer, 2023, with Sage. So I had a fantastic mentor named Dr. Andrea Albert under doing astrophysics and particle physics. I worked at a branch of the laboratory called LANCE, which is pictured here and stands for the Los Alamos Neutron Science Center. And even more specifically, I worked in the P1 Dynamic Imaging and Radiography division. So, about my project, I was searching for dark matter using the HAWK Gamma Ray Observatory. So HAWK stands for High Altitude Water Cherenkov. It is a gamma ray observatory in the mountains in Puebla, Mexico. It has 300 of these giant tanks full of water. And so the idea is that when a gamma ray is emitted from space, it hits our atmosphere and creates a cascade or shower of secondary charged particles. And when this particle shower hits the tanks at HAWK, it emits Cherenkov radiation, which is seen as a visible flash of blue light. And we can measure the brightness of this flash, and then judging by the brightness, we can tell how much energy the gamma ray had. So this is significant because dark matter has never been detected before. It is highly theoretical. But there are many theories that state that it is some sort of undiscovered particle. So if these two hypothetical dark matter particles were to collide, they would emit a gamma ray of very high energy. And that's what HAWK is detecting. So by detecting high energy gamma rays, HAWK provides evidence that dark matter exists, even though it has never been detected. So my personal contribution to this project, I learned some Python coding, and using the HAWK data set, I made plots like the one you see here. It is an upper limit plot, which just means that so I looked at 9 specific giant galaxies that are observed with HAWK, and these points in the plot represent groups of data, which are gamma rays when they hit HAWK of different energies. We group them into these different points. So down here on bin L at the bottom, it will have gamma rays that were of the highest energy, whereas up at the top, it will have lower energy gamma rays. This dotted line represents the source, and so these dots are the upper limits. On the y-axis, you can see we have E squared as a function of dNdE, which just means the number of photons per energy. So it's how we group the gamma rays into these data points based on the brightness. And on the x-axis, you have energy in TeV, which is tera electron volts. So HAWK, the observatory, can detect gamma rays up to 100 tera electron volts, which is extremely high energy, which makes data from this observatory very significant. So during the Summer Physics Camp for Young Women and the Miss CEO workshops, I learned important steps to success that have proved very useful in my internship. The idea is that you must accept outcomes that are not ideal the first time so that you can get it right the next time around. Oh. Okay, so during my internship at LANL, I became acquainted with dark matter theorists in Stockholm, Sweden. So another very influential, very useful skill that I've learned is with communication and collaboration. So I was able to meet with these scientists online to discuss the project and my contribution. And I sent them my upper limit plots using the private Hawk dataset. So since the Hawk dataset is private, I was able to use that data to create these plots. And we created this collaboration where we would send them our upper limit plots, and then these theorists could use these plots to constrain dark matter models, since they did not have access to the private Hawk dataset. Thus, we become closer and closer to detecting dark matter. Overall, this internship has proved very beneficial through the connections I've made, not only with scientists and astrophysicists in a field that I have great interest, but also I've connected with other interns my age and made new friendships and been exposed to many different astrophysical aspects of the world. I have engaged in many fun activities this summer as well, such as team picnics and team meetings, as well as expanded my knowledge exponentially. And for other SAGE alumni, I suggest that you make friends with other students your age, as it makes the job much more enjoyable. So thank you to the SAGE Journey program and the Department of Energy Office of Science of High Energy Physics for providing this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Evie. That was a great talk, and it's very good that you acknowledge the Department of Energy and the program that supported your internship. Thank you. Okay, continue. If you have a question for Evie, please put them in the chat, and we'll go to the next with the next speaker, that is Ashley.
Okay, let's see. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Majora. Next. Oh, too far. A little bit about me. I am currently a rising junior at Sweetbriar College, which, if you haven't heard of it, is an all-women's college in Virginia, which is where I currently am. So I'm a slightly different time zone than most of the rest of you. At Sweetbriar, I am majoring in engineering sciences, and I will either be majoring in mathematics or getting a minor, depending on how the credit hours play out. And at Sweetbriar, in my free time, I am also a dual sport collegiate athlete, and I play both field hockey and lacrosse. And that is me. At a game last season, I am the goalie for my field hockey team. So for my summer internship, I was interning at the SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory. My mentor was Scott Kaminsky, and my supervisor was Julia. We were a part of the Accelerator Directorate, and I was working mainly with pressure systems. So at SLAC, a lot of this is vessels, tanks, piping systems, gauges that are on these piping systems, vacuum systems, and the cryogenic systems. All of these really fall under the pressure systems at SLAC. In this picture down at the bottom, you can see a picture of the different sections of the accelerator at SLAC, and all of these are really powered by the pressure systems and cryogenic systems that help keep the accelerator cool, that allows them to get the high energy beamline. So I worked on two different projects because there were kind of two parts of my internship. For the first 2 weeks, I was working virtually from Virginia, as I hadn't been able to make it out to California yet. So that first project when I was virtually was mainly working on calculating the minimum required wall thicknesses for pipes and pressure vessels based on the ASME, the safety codes. So For the first one I calculated, it was a pipe schedule, which is the nominal wall thickness you need for a pipe based off of the pressure it's under, what's actually flowing through the system, based off all of those different safety codes. These equations down in the bottom were in part used for that. And those were from, I believe, the B31.3 safety code. And I also then calculated the wall thicknesses required for the shell and head of a vessel, both when it would be under internal design pressure and external design pressure. And that was during the virtual part of my internship. This picture on the right here is one of the safety codes I was referencing during this whole process. The most valuable skill I learned from this was the utilization of safety codes in real world situations. It's not something that you learn about in school. In school, you're learning how to do the math, the concepts behind it, but actually how to look something up in these safety codes that can be thousands of pages long was a very valuable and tangible skill that I think can carry over into almost any field of science and engineering, and I'm very grateful to have had that experience. So then the second project I worked on, which was more when I was in person, I was virtual for 2 weeks and I was in person for 6 weeks about. So this was the second part of my project, which was analyzing the pressure systems database at SLAC. So the pressure systems database, or the PSDB, is a database of all of the pressure systems that are currently at SLAC, whether they're in use, whether they're currently not in service, all of them. And my goal with this project was to compare and attempt to gather documentation on all of these pressure systems and compile it into one location. So me personally, I only looked at about 90 pressure systems, and there's several thousand. And the pressure systems I was looking at had a preliminary risk factor of 1, 2, or 2s, and that ended up being 90 systems. In this graph on the right, it shows the breakdown of the in-use pressure systems by risk level. So you can see the section I was looking at are the tiny red sliver, the orange, and the yellow. So I wasn't looking at a very large section of this database, but it was still over 90 systems. And then in this graph on the bottom, the bar graph, that shows a breakdown by system type. So between vacuum system, pressure system, and cryogenic system of those pressure systems I was analyzing. And those were the three main types. And then I also was comparing them based off of the system contents, what standards the pressure systems were built to, whether they were ASME standard, whether they were not, etc. And I would say this provided me an opportunity to perform data analysis like I never had before. I was working across 4 different databases, including what's known as the V drive at SLAC. I was working at the plan review systems that has all of the submitted proposals for different updates and building changes, etc. So I was looking across all of these different databases and attempting to compile it into one location. And computing that kind of data analysis on such a scale wasn't something I'd had much experience with. And it was very valuable to be able to spend my time doing that. So then my personal favorite of the Miss CEO sessions that we were able and lucky to participate in was networking was discussed and to always follow up. And that was something that I had attempted to do in the past but never done well. So during these Miss CEO sessions, we were really given tips and tricks, some advice on how to do that. For example, rather than just sending a LinkedIn, making sure you send a message with it explaining how you know that person, why you're trying to connect with them on LinkedIn, or sending an email asking to maybe meet up in person and actually get some face-to-face time where you can discuss this and hopefully build that future professional relationship. And I did try and take this advice to heart. I actually sent an email to the math teacher from my high school who recommended me for the Sage Camp, and I thanked him and told him how his opportunity had grown into such an amazing thing and how I was now interning there. And he actually did respond, and we've been emailing back and forth every couple weeks since then. So always follow up, even if it's a couple years later. Worst comes to worst, they don't respond. Best case scenario, you never know what kind of opportunities they could have for you. So always leave the door open for future conversations was my favorite advice from the Miss CEO sessions that we were lucky enough to attend.
Thank you, Ashley.
Sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
And it was an absolutely incredible experience. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. This is a picture from one of the intern events, including 2 Sage interns who I think we're hearing from later. It was amazing, and I would like to thank the Sage Journey and the Department of Energy for providing this amazing experience, as well as my mentor, my supervisor, and the other interns who helped me with my project.
Thank you, Ashley. I think that was a very good mechanical engineer project, and I'm glad I witnessed that you had a good experience as an intern. Thank you very
Thank you. It truly was life-changing.
Okay. Okay, our next speaker is Diana.
All right, can you guys hear me through this one? And then I'll share my screen over here. Okay. Okay, so my name is Diana, and I'm about to be I'm a senior at St. Michael's High School in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And my internship was at Lanel, and I worked in T5, which is theoretical division, and it is applied mathematics and plasma physics. My mentors were Dr. Shomi Day and Ingo, and they were Shomi was in T5, and then Ingo was in T2, which is nuclear physics, particle physics, astrophysics, and cosmology. And my big issue was neutron star research with the nuclear equation of state. So my project had to do with neutron stars. So I did not know what those were when I first started. So they are the most compact stellar object, measuring about 10 to 13 kilometers in radius, but they weigh as much as the sun or even more. So they have a mass of like 1.3 to 2.4 solar mass. And so if there's 2 of these stars near each other, they're going to begin to spiral around each other, and the stars deform. One star deforms its companion star. So star A will deform star B, and star B will deform star A. And this is called the tidal deformability parameter. The nuclear equation of state, EOS, is a relationship that between radius and mass. And there's only one true equation of state realized in nature, and it is not known yet. And gravitational waves could be used to constrain the equation of state. So what is a gravitational wave? So it's produced when there's 2 massive objects, and they move around each other at very high speeds. And they're going to squeeze and stretch whatever they pass by. But since they come from so far away, once they reach us, we cannot feel them. And since they're so weak, LIGO was invented to measure the waves, and it's a laser technology, very accurate and very hard to measure. So my results, I measured the parameters on neutron stars, so like their radius, their how much they weighed and things like that. So these are some of the things I measured. And so you can see there's a peak on the gray plots, there's a peak. And that's what it most likely is. And so the chirp mass is a specific combination between mass 1 and mass 2. And the yellow is a 2-dimensional plot posterior And it basically shows a correlation between all the parameters. So you can see a correlation between like the mass one and the radius. And then I added constraints, electromagnetic constraints of what happened after the stars merged, and I could get more direct results. So when it was just the gravitational waves, you can see the blue. And so it was very wide, and the peak wasn't so high. Then I added the first electromagnetic constraint, and that narrowed it down and added a peak. And then I added the second electromagnetic constraint, and it narrowed it down even more and created the peak a little more. I'm so sorry if this is not like, since we are on time, I can't fully describe everything. So if it does not make much sense, I very much apologize. So my professional growth topic that I really appreciated from Miss CEO was professional networking. While working at Lano, I met so many different types of people. My mentors really connected me with people who do different things, different sorts of science, and that were also very interesting, and that helped me figure out kind of what I want to do and expand my professional network. And so my internship experience, I broadened my knowledge, my programming knowledge to run my code. So I used a Python code, but to be able to run my code, I was able to use the Department of Energy's NERSC supercomputer, Prometer, which was very cool because like I never thought I would have that opportunity, especially in high school, to use a supercomputer. And my professional networking and my astrophysical knowledge, of course. I met many sorts of people, different scientists, and I made friends. So like Evie, you definitely, like Evie said, I definitely recommend if you do an internship, like talk to as many people as you can, whether it's people a lot older than you or like people your age, it'll make it a lot more fun. And so the internship process, so last year I went to the summer physics camp for young women, and Dr. Nicole Lloyd-Ronning spoke, and I was very interested in what she said. So I emailed her asking about internships, and she helped me apply. Like she was like, oh, like apply to this link, and like helped me figure it out. And then I started working. And so I want to thank Lano, SAGE, and the U.S. Department of Energy, the Office of Science. And thank you for listening.
Good job, Diana. Thank you. And thank you for being on time. Any question for Diana? What math and physics courses prepare you for your internship? You still there? We lost her.
Yeah, do you want me to say it, or I can also type it in the chat?
You can talk. Yeah, type it in the chat, and then we go to the next speaker.
All right, sounds good.
So we can stay on time. Thank you. Okay, now our next speaker is Kushi.
All right, thank you, Julia. Let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Kushi, and I'm a pharmaceutical chemistry major minoring in electrical engineering at UC Davis, and I'm going to be an incoming third year. And my internship was at SLAC with my mentor, Dr. Sherry Zhang, and we focused on lithium sulfur batteries. So just like a little overview about what I'm going to be going over. I'm going to be giving like a general intro about what lithium sulfur batteries are, synthesizing catalysts, and my overall internship experience. So here's just a schematic of how a lithium sulfur battery looks. And so we have our anode, which is lithium, our cathode is sulfur, and then our electrolyte is this liquid medium that allows ions to be transported. And so currently the most common type of battery is the lithium ion battery, but we're actually exploring lithium sulfur batteries because they have a higher energy density, a lower cost of raw materials, and they're actually more environmentally friendly. But one of the major challenges that we're facing currently is that they have a limited cycle life. And this is because of this idea of polysulfide shuttling, which is where the polysulfide intermediates in our battery reaction, they get dissolved in the electrolyte. And so our solution to this issue is to design catalysts. And more specifically, we're focused on designing a high entropy alloy catalyst, which is basically a mixture of 5 or more elements in relatively equal proportions. And this has been shown to enhance activity, really create more possibilities, and improve overall battery performance. And here's the process of how we created our high entropy catalyst. So first we started out with a metal chloride precursor solution with various types of metals, so like nickel, iron, cobalt, various different ones, in ethanol solvent. And so that's this teal looking liquid right here. And then to actually synthesize our nanoparticles, we use this technique called ultrasonic cavitation. So that's where we transduced ultrasound waves, and that formed, grew, and then collapsed bubbles in the solution, and that caused interparticle collisions, basically synthesizing our metal nanoparticles. And then recently we were working on washing the nanoparticles, so separating the solid from the ethanol solvent. And then here's a TEM of our elemental distribution of the various elements we actually saw in the nanoparticles. And then after this, what we'll be working on this week is actually creating our batteries and testing out our catalyst to see how effective it is. So throughout the internship, I definitely gained a lot of experience and new skills. One of the main things I actually learned was time management and prioritizing urgent versus important. So I actually started this internship in March virtually, and it was pretty difficult to sort of manage like classes, some of my other jobs, the research. And so this idea of having like 2 separate categories of urgent or important based on like deadline really helped me focus my attention to like one task at a time, so I could really complete things more efficiently instead of getting overwhelmed. Some other skills I learned were more technical, so in the lab using a glove box, and then how to conduct research and present our findings in meetings. And then overall, I had a wonderful experience. I got to use the glove box for the first time, which was really exciting. I toured the Stanford campus. I met a lot of new friends. So it was a really nice experience. And I'd like to thank the Sage Journey program, the Department of Energy Office of Science, Loy, Julia, my mentor Sherry, and my fellow SLAC intern Emma for this amazing opportunity.
Thank you, Kushi.
Thank you.
Any question for Kushi, please put it in the chat. Thank you very much. I'm glad you had a good experience, and that you get to, do it either in person and remotely, so you could really use all the time available. Okay, now our next speaker is Janavi. Janavi didn't attend the Sage internship program, but she attended another type of internship. So we invited her because we want to emphasize that the Sage internship program has very limited access. We have very limited amount of internship positions, but there are so many internship programs at every lab, and so we encourage you to apply to those. And Janavi is going to tell you about her experience.
Thank you for the intro, Julia. So I'm Janavi. And a little bit about me. I'm going to be a sophomore in college at UC Santa Barbara. I'm studying physics. This summer, I did my internship at Slack, and I was a part of the LCLS internship program. So they were the ones who were funding my summer as opposed to SAGE, but fortunately, as I'm a SAGE alumni, I was invited to all the SAGE events, and so I got to dabble in a bit of both experiences, which was really neat. So to give you some context about what my group does, I was a part of the LCLS division. And basically what we do is we use an X-ray laser to investigate biological or chemical samples. And from using this X-ray laser, we can investigate the structure of such biological and chemical samples. And so you need a way to deliver your sample into the beamline, which is a field called sample delivery. And so that's what my group was doing. So we were a combination of the bio group and the sample delivery group. And essentially, so you can see this thing labeled liquid jet. And what this does is it shoots out a stream of liquid so that when your target hits when your sample hits the X-ray, it will get destroyed. And then the next sample will be continuously replenished by this liquid jet. So there are many different kinds of sample delivery systems, but ultimately many of them rely on something called microfluidic loops, which are a set of standard components for plumbing, essentially, like plumbing very small amounts of liquid. And so you typically have a component like you have pumps, you have some tubing, which you can see this like black tubing here. You'll often have a reservoir of whatever kind of sample you're trying to flow through this microfluidic loop. And the goal of my project is that oftentimes there are people who would like to study anaerobic samples, so samples that will degrade as they're exposed to oxygen. However, there's no current way of maintaining an anaerobic environment while you're delivering your sample to the beam. So this becomes a problem because over the 8 hours of imaging, of data collection, your sample can degrade heavily. And so by the end of that process, your sample is basically useless. And so it's really important that we're able to maintain an anaerobic environment. An anaerobic sample delivery. So the way that we plan to do that, I had to design my own experiment. Basically, we're using something called methylviologen, which is a chemical that will change color as it's exposed to oxygen. So the idea is that the chemical starts as a blue color, and then as it's oxidized, it turns clear. And so the idea is that we flow this chemical through our microfluidic loop and use something called a spectrometer to detect color change. And therefore we can correlate it back to how much oxygen is being released into whatever sample we might put through this microfluidic loop. As for some skills, I learned how to be in the chem lab. I'm a physics major and therefore have never had, I took chemistry, but I never had to pipette anything or wear a lab coat or gloves or anything. So that was a really novel experience. And I definitely had to get used to being exclusively in the lab and all the challenges that come with that. And then I also learned a lot from a CEO, of course. And one thing that really resonated me with was the idea of talking and doing. So there are people who talk a lot about what they do with little to back them up. There are people who do a lot, but don't mention it to other people. And so there's a good combination that will help you in the future. And I found that one way to do that is that when I'm asking other people for help, outside of my mentor, to really clarify what the goal of my project is, which helps them help me better, but also makes them aware of any important work that I might be doing. So I thought that was a really helpful thing. Another thing is the journal club. My mentor led something called the journal club, which was offered by the LCLS program. And what we did was we learned specific scientific skills, like how do you properly take notes on scientific papers? How do you create scientific figures, things like that. We also read some core papers in the fields of sample delivery and structural biology, which helped to contextualize our summer projects. So why is what we're doing important, and what our projects can be applied to in the future. So I'd recommend that for any projects you do in the future, looking into some high impact papers in your field. Some other suggestions definitely apply to the LCLS internship. I found that it was more flexible as opposed to some of the other internships at Slack. For example, we just need a resume and a cover letter, which are hopefully pretty like low threshold items. So I would definitely recommend. I pulled my content for my cover letter for my college apps, so hopefully not too much work. Another thing is that I'm a part of the College of Creative Studies at UCSB, and I would highly recommend everyone who's interested in applying to the UCs apply to the College of Creative Studies, which is more research focused program. Not many people know about it, but I love it. Another thing is that even if you're not assigned the perfect project, it doesn't mean it's not useful. So I'm a physics major. I was hoping to do physics at Slack, but I was assigned a chemistry project. However, I learned a lot from it. So definitely try to have an open mind about anything that you might be assigned. Lastly, careful ironing your Sage shirt. I accidentally burned the logo into our iron. So just be careful. And then I had an amazing time this summer. I met so many amazing friends. I saw a deer in the parking lot. I got to eat bagels every week. We went on a hike to the dish, and I became absolute besties with Charlotte. So yeah, it was an amazing summer. I had so much fun. Or I guess I still have a few weeks left, but yeah. And then I'd like to acknowledge the SAGE program, the Office of Science, from DOE, and then of course LCLS for funding my time here, and a few key people like my mentor Sebastian, my group Julia and Loy for all their support.
Good job, Genevieve. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And thank you for the heads up about the Sage shirt. That was really funny. I'm glad you had a good experience. And thank you for sharing about the journal club. It's something that we will consider for next year for all the Sage alumni. We'll contact your mentor to share. This is a very good idea, and I think it's worth exploring. Okay, if you have any question for Genevieve, please write them in the chat. She's gonna stay connected and respond if you have them. And our next speaker is Arumi.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then let me share my screen. Yes. Okay. Can you see the presentation? Okay, I have to go back to the beginning. Okay. Cool. Well, hello. My name is Harumi. I intern. So I'm a student at Santa Clara University. I'm a mechanical engineering major. I am going into my second year of university. I attended SAGE in 2021. My mentor was Annika Gabriel. I interned at Slack this last summer in the Technically and Innovation Directorate and the Radio Frequency Accelerator Research Division. So the Radio Frequency Accelerator, Radio Frequency Accelerator Research Division did a lot of high radio frequency experiments, one of them being my mentor's experiment being with terahertz measurement. So first off, what is terahertz? Terahertz is an electromagnetic wave, and it can be used for a variety of different applications, including ultrafast spectroscopy, which allows us to take pictures of atomic and molecular structures. It can be used for particle acceleration. So the terahertz allows for larger acceleration gradients, which then allows to have more energy per meter, which then allows us to make more compact particle accelerators. And then terahertz can also be used for beam manipulation, which is exactly as it sounds. You're manipulating a beam. So the terahertz measurement experiment that my mentor was conducting was, you can see it, the optics set up on the left. And then on the right, you can see the experimental diagram. So the laser beam comes in and it is split into two paths. On one path, the beam travels through an optic system, and then down where you see the LN, that is a lithium niobate crystal. So the lithium niobate crystal interacts with a part of the beam, and it oscillates to then create terahertz radiation. And then the terahertz radiation then travels through a gap crystal, and then the gap crystal allows for the terahertz and the laser beam that it traveled around to interact. And then by looking at that interaction through pictures taken by a CCD camera, we can tell different properties of the terahertz. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay, cool. So the initial data that I was given, so you can, I hope you can see the GIF, but if it's a little choppy, you can get a kind of general idea of how the terahertz is moving the experiment. In the bottom, you'll see one timestamp of data. And so initially what I was looking at was just one timestamp at one point and trying to get what the strength value at that point. So you can see the initial strength graphs that I did to like double check my work. And then once I did that, I was working on taking strength of, so I looked at strengths of the horizontal, and then I looked at strengths of the vertical. And then by doing that, I was able to get a average strength of an area. And then the ultimate goal, which I'm still working on, is to get the strength value at a specific point over a full scan, which could be up to hundreds of photos. So the reason why this is important is because by identifying the strength values at different points, we can then observe different properties of terahertz, which can then be used for different applications of terahertz. So it wasn't all work. I got to meet a lot of really interesting people. I had a lot of fun this summer. And so some of the challenges I faced this summer was that I came in very insecure, very afraid, because since I'm on the quarter system, I ended my quarter pretty late in the summer. So I came in a few weeks after all the other interns. However, I didn't have any need to be afraid, because once I got to know them, I realized that like they didn't all know exactly what they were doing all the time. We were all learning consistently. I also had a lack of confidence, as Python was not my strongest suit, and I knew that I needed to work on that. I was just like afraid of how long that would take me in comparison to like some of the other interns that were coming in with like very strong computer science backgrounds. Also, asking for help was very hard for me, because I would like sit for like a day and be like trying to figure something out, but then like I could just ask for help and then my mentor would explain it in like 5 minutes. So, but despite all of that, something that I'm really proud of myself is that despite all these insecurities, I never doubted my ability to learn and adapt. And as I was faced with these problems or these challenges over the summer, I definitely became more comfortable in my ability to just learn and be more confident in myself. And the main takeaways I had from the Miss CEO seminars were time blocking. So time blocking and task prioritization. So there are different ways of like time blocking where like some people will be most productive in like chunks of time, whereas some people will have like smaller bits of time and then like breaks in between. For me, I know that I prefer to work early in the morning. So I learned that throughout the summer that for me, it'd be better to do my code in the morning, and then like my more mundane like things that didn't require as much brain energy in the evenings, which would be like my presentation and my emails. Another big takeaway was mentorship and networking. So I have a hard time like taking that first step of like saying hello or like sending an email for networking. But I also realized that that's really important to not only learn more about things in your own field, but also things that aren't maybe not be in your field. And by reaching out, you open the door for new opportunities, new friends, new mentors. So something that I have practiced is like just taking the deep breath, because the initial anxiety will go away after you like just send the email. Overall, this was a really positive experience for me, and I loved all the people that I met this summer and everything that I've learned. So special thanks to my mentor, Loy, who got me to apply to this internship, TID at SAGE, and the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Rumi. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm glad you had a good experience, and it's still going on until September, right? Yes. Okay. If you have question for Arumi about her no, not complicated. She knows everything now about it. System. Write them in the chat, and we're gonna go to our next speaker, that is Charlotte. Arumi, stop sharing your screen so Charlotte can share. Here you go.
Okay. So my name is Charlotte Meredith, and this was my SAGE internship. So a little bit about me. I go to UC Berkeley studying molecular and cellular biology, and I'll be a second-year undergraduate, and my SAGE internship was at SLAC. So a brief overview of my project is I was working to image biological molecules, specifically proteins. And so this was in the LCLS directorate, and I was working with two main groups, machine learning, which was more data analysis and processing, and then in the SED group, sample environmental delivery and biological group, and that was me working on biological samples. And my mentors were Frederick Poitevin and Maifi Kashipapi. So more specific details on my project, my work was split between working in the dry lab and wet lab settings. So I first worked in the dry lab, and here I learned to code with Python, Git and GitHub, the Unix terminal, and SSH. And so once I learned this, I then coded an internal website called Computers 101 for LCLS users to use. And so the idea is the LCLS is an open user facility. And so people from all over the world come to use it, and they need computing power to access and process their data. But they come with varying levels and differing backgrounds in computing skills. And so this is the gap between that and their needs at the beamline. And so here I wrote it in Markdown, and here's the code for the website. And this is a small portion of the website. I then worked in the wet lab and mostly worked with protein crystallization. And so this was working with buffers, concentrations, and general lab work in a lab setting for a greater purpose of understanding crystallographic processes. And this has transferable work to genetic work, both molecularly and cellularly. And so here are images of my crystal sample at 2 different resolutions. So you can see the little clusters are lysozyme in this case. One of the skills we learned in Miss CEO was goal setting. And so both long-term and short-term goals need articulation in order to come to fruition. And so the way you can do this is by making it SMART. So that's making it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And so you want to make your goal as specific as possible. So for any SAGE campers in the audience, let's say your goal is, I want to intern at SLAC. A better way to phrase this is you want to intern in the summer before freshman year with CREO-M and hopefully learn data plotting and accelerator physics. Or for those like in high school, I want to be a leader in a club. You could say after working for 15 plus hours per week into planning events for your club, you want to continue your service and be the president for the next school year. So making it more specific makes it more achievable for yourself. And so in general, my experience and advice for the internship. This internship was my introduction to a STEM career, and specifically biological fields that aren't human healthcare or like ecology, because that's all I really knew about biology. But I knew there was more out there, I just didn't know what it was. And so this internship was also an ideal first internship experience because the SAGE program is unique compared to other internship programs in that it's designed for you to learn skills. Other internship programs kind of have you jump into a research project, and you need to know some skills in order to actually do that. But with SAGE, they make it clear to your mentor and to you that it's for you to learn skills so that later on you can contribute to maybe a more research-oriented project. And it really gives you the space to learn and experiment in this way. And working at SLAC, it also gave me experience working at a national laboratory, because those projects are slightly different than, let's say, like projects in industry. So my advice would be to ask questions and also ask other professionals what their projects are. That's how I got involved with wet lab work just in my internship, because I saw, people going in and out of the labs, and I saw them working with samples. So I asked my mentor, and he was able to connect me with the head of the biolabs. And so I was then able to work the last half of my internship there. And any experience is valuable. So we toured Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and I was able to see that almost no biological work is done there. So I was able to learn that maybe I don't want to work there. So any experience is valuable for you. And I'd also say starting earlier gives you more time to explore. There's no rush to jump into a career or your education, but some of my coworkers, they'll be seniors in college, and the internship they're doing, they did like, but if they didn't, it would have given them less room to see what they wanted to do before grad school, for example. And so I just wanted to give my thanks to the SAGE Journey program and the Department of Energy, Office of Science, High Energy Physics, the SAGE team, and my internship mentors.
Thank you, Charlotte. Nice that you find the SAGE logo. Thank you. Good job. Okay, if you have questions for Charlotte, please write them in the chat or compliments. And our next speaker is Claire.
Okay, hey everyone. Let me just play this. So I'm Claire McKechnie. I'm from Marin County, California, and I am a sophomore. I'm actually in the process of moving in right now at Cornell University, and I'm studying mechanical engineering. I interned this summer with SLAC, and I'm just going to talk about my experience. So kind of an introduction. My mentor was Alana McConnell. She's a mechanical engineer for the LCLS high energy upgrade. She focuses on designing and validating vacuum systems to ensure the safety of the beamline, because there is a possibility that the beam derails and there's a leak. So it's important for the accelerator to be in an ultra high vacuum state to run efficiently. So before I get into my project, I'm gonna give a little background on vacuum science. So the accelerator operates at a molecular flow, which is a region, a pressure region where the molecules, instead of colliding with each other, they mainly just collide with the wall at very high or at high frequencies. And they also below, I have this little diagram. Once they hit the wall, they actually act differently in molecular flow. Instead of just rebounding immediately, they sometimes just stall at the wall and then re-emit in a random direction, or it's not actually perfectly random. It's a cosine distribution, so it's more likely to bounce off at a 90-degree angle. So I studied a lot of properties having to do with conductance. So conductance defines the flow of the gas. It depends on the pipe length and diameter and pumping speeds and outgassing rates. There's all these things that dictate conductance, and there's these equations that depend on if the vacuum tube is considered a long or a short tube. So this is a transmission probability table based on length divided by diameter ratio of a circular tube. Each L/D ratio has a transmission probability. And the transmission probability is basically just the probability that a molecule exits or enters and exits a pipe. So the problem with this table is that there's a cutoff. There's gaps in the table. So from 50 to 500, you can see that there's not really L/D ratios that are accounted for. And there's also not a clear understanding of what is a short and what is a long tube. So one of my projects of the summer was to kind of fill in the gaps of this specific table for conductance calculations, and to also have a better understanding of which equation to use, because there's long tube equations and short tube equations and all these different calculations that really depend on the parameters. So in order to do this, I used this software called MolFlow, and it's a simulation software that uses the Monte Carlo method. And so since it's using Monte Carlo method, which is just having it's based on a tons of random samples of molecules just being emitted through different geometries, we're going to assume it's true. So basically what I did is I hand calculated using the different conductance equations, actually both long and short equations, and then I compared those calculations to MolFlow and tried to figure out which equations to use and which one was more accurate. Because MolFlow, so I basically just used MolFlow to validate some of the equations and to fill in the gaps of the table. So here's my results. I found that for the most part, short and long tube equations, they explain most of the ranges. So for L/D equals 100 and greater, it was pretty clear that the long tube calculation was best to use. And then for L/D is 50 and below, it was the short tube calculation that matched pretty well with MolFlow. But I noticed that from 50 to 100, there was a gap, and it seemed that no equation actually was fit for the MolFlow results that I had. So I ended up searching the web and doing tons of research, and found that there's this paper that I actually explained an equation to use in this exact range. So as a result, I created a new transmission probability table for my mentor and for other engineers to use. And I included my findings and the different equations, or the new equations to use. And I also wrote a MATLAB program to fill in transmission probability columns based on L/D ratios of an Excel file. So basically just updating files for the purpose of having accurate conductance calculations. And then for professional growth, I think someone already touched on this, but I found that there were lots of tasks and things that I had responsibilities for. So I found that having a way to organize this is key. So I relied on my to-do list to assign priorities and to keep track of my progress. And having a to-do list is also very good because it's a quantified, it's a key metric. It's a good goal that your mentor can see, because this was shared with my mentor and she helped me create it. So it's good to track progress.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Overall, it was a great experience. Advice for future interns: definitely apply, get involved, talk to everyone. Had a great time meeting friends. And yeah, I'd like to just thank the Sage Journey program and Department of Energy, Lloyd, Julia, and my mentor, Elena. So thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions, just let me know in the chat.
Thank you, Claire, for your presentation. Good job. Vacuum is one of my expertise, so I appreciate the presentation. Yes, make sure that you get in contact with everyone during your internship. If you have questions for Claire, write them in the chat. Our next speaker is Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin, and I'm a rising sophomore at UCSD. And I interned at the Slack lab this summer, mentored by Xiaochu Wang and Dave Chasson in the Gizmo group tackling issues in renewable energy. And my specific project was forecasting electricity market prices. And I'm just going to start with a little background of electricity price forecasts. So electricity is an economically non-storable good, which requires a balance between production and consumption, especially because electricity is produced at the exact moment of demand, which makes it a bit of a challenge to deal with. And in the wholesale market participants submit their bids and offers to the market. So utility companies will submit their bids and generator companies will submit their offers, and based on these bids and offers, market operators can clear the market and generate electricity market prices. And it's also important to note that the electricity market price forecast has many benefits, such as resource planning, so that utility companies and power producers would be able to plan their resource allocation and investment decisions, such as building new infrastructure, and as well as renewable energy integration so that power producers can anticipate the peak electricity generation in order to align with the peak electricity demand. And so our motivation behind electricity price forecasting is that we want to produce the best model to predict any future events or spikes that can occur given the historical data, which we primarily focused on the temperature, demand, and price data to help us minimize risk and maximize profits. And furthermore, electricity market price forecasting can benefit energy arbitrage, which are the strategies for energy storage systems, because power can be bought and stored during off-peak hours when prices are cheap and be utilized during peak hours when the grid electrical prices are expensive, which is an example of how we would be able to maximize profits. And since we wanted to determine which model would be the most ideal, my mentor and I focused on statistical modeling. And we originally tested out the linear regression model, which predicts the relationship between two variables, and also the autoregressive integrated moving average model. But later we mainly focused on the linear time invariant system, which is a mathematical model to describe a behavior of a system that is both linear and time invariant. And all these models are used to help us predict future trends more precisely. And throughout this internship, I used Python programming on Jupyter notebooks to get our results and build our models. And I actually did not have much prior experience in coding, so this was a bit of a challenge to get used to. But this internship is part of a learning experience and a chance for us to expose ourselves to new topics and enhance skills. So don't be afraid of not knowing everything when going into your internship. But back to my results, I got some, like for the forecasting, we mainly took into account temperature and load, but on the left we have both only temperature taken into account, and I observed the mean absolute percentage error value is much smaller with both temperature and load taken into account, which helps us back up the idea that both of these variables should be considered instead of only taking into account temperature when we're forecasting. And since the LTI model has reached a mean absolute percentage error value of around like 5%, this proves to be pretty accurate and can help us forecast prices with little error going forward. And to end off with some advice that I learned from a CEO and some insight from personal experience this summer is to expand your network. And this doesn't necessarily have to be staff you connect with, like in your workspace. You can also connect with fellow interns. I found myself doing that a lot because they actually might be with people you work with in the future or help connect you to other people. So it doesn't, like, expand your network does not necessarily mean only reaching out to higher ups, although you should try and break out of your bubble and form professional relationships with them as well, because they can definitely help you in the future and give you great advice as like mentors. And yeah, overall, my experience in the office workspace was really positive. Everyone around does really want you to succeed and are willing to provide support if you need it. And another piece of advice is definitely attend the Miss CEO sessions led by Anita, because working in a male-dominated field with not much experience can get really intimidating at times, and you find yourself sometimes questioning if you belong in the workspace. But these workshops do help you build confidence and make you feel like you should belong, and help guide you through these tough situations. So I definitely recommend you attend those if you participate in an internship next summer. And thank you to Loy and Julia for providing this opportunity to me, my mentors Xiaochu and Dave, the Sage Journey program, Slack, and DUE for sponsoring this internship. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Caitlin. Very good presentation. Okay, students are asking about Miss CEO. We're going to respond directly in the chat. And our next presenter is Karina.
Hello.
Check the chat. All the speakers that already is presented, please check the chat in case you have any questions from the participants.
There were some questions for Claire. So Claire, please check out the chat.
Yeah, I didn't see any question for her, but yes, okay. Check the chat.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Karina. I'm a sophomore at UC Berkeley. I was an intern at Slack this summer working on the Engineering Process Guide, or EPG, with Lydia Young. It's basically an online database made using Confluence for engineering resources, and it's meant for quick access, like one place where engineering resources are consolidated for all of Slack. The Engineering Process Guide can reduce the amount of time spent searching for documents by keeping everything in one place. So the Engineering Process Guide, or EPG, is structured in 4 main levels, with the homepage at the top, contents page under it, which is the master view of how the EPG is organized, and then section pages at the 3rd level, which organizes articles. And articles are the pages with the important content. So in addition to completing the EPG itself, I wrote a guide on how to manage and update the site, which I found more challenging than making the actual EPG because I couldn't assume that the audience I was writing for had any prior knowledge of Confluence. And I had to revise my draft multiple times to make sure that the instructions for formatting, uploading, attaching, and troubleshooting were clear enough for someone who might not know anything. I was expecting to have 5 to 6 pages for instructions at the beginning of the summer, but my first draft ended up being 17 pages, and now the latest version is 36. So here's what the contents page looks like. Every box is like a bin to organize articles. But this is like a master overview that shows where every article lives. The text in blue, I know it's a small image, but it's kind of a long page. So the text in blue here is indicates like functioning articles. So articles that we have written and uploaded and are ready to access and read. And everything in black is planned articles for the future that have to be worked on still. To make the EPG easy to use, there are multiple ways to find an article. So there's the contents page to see everything, a search bar up here on the top, and then on the left-hand side, there's a sidebar where you can find an A to Z page, a page tree, and also another search bar. So here's an example of the page tree. It's a map of where the pages are in the hierarchy. So you can see the indentations, like change control here is under configuration management, and it's all under the master contents page. And then here's an example of the A to Z list. This is an example of an article. This one is titled Conduct of Engineering Policy, all the way at the top here. Article information is organized into different tabs. So the picture on the right is an example of the overview tab, which is like a cover page for the rest of the article. It summarizes things and has a place for contact information if anything needs to be revised or changed. And then on the left is an example of a slightly longer tab that includes pictures. So this is where the majority of the information is. I had a couple goals this summer, but I'll be focusing on my goal of asking better questions.
I practiced asking questions a lot throughout the summer. Most of the work in creating the EPG was researching and troubleshooting because I didn't have any prior experience with Confluence. I learned over and over that changing the phrase I Google by just a little bit could lead to more helpful results. And the part of problem solving for this project that took the longest for me was figuring out what to ask. I was also encouraged by my mentor to go interview scientists at Slack. I asked these scientists about their career paths and how they found their interests. And even though I went into these interviews with prepared questions, I learned something different from everyone that I talked to. Yeah, thank you to my mentor, Lydia, to Loy, Julia, the SAGE program, and the DOE for the opportunity to work at Slack this summer.
Thank you, Karina, for your presentation. And Karina is an example of someone that, you know, if has been talking with other people, networking, and she might stay connected with the national lab during her school time as well. So you just keep on speaking with people. You can get internships that are also, you know, that last a year long.
Yeah, thank you.
To Karina, please write them in the chat. And our next speaker is Lauren.
Okay, hi. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm Lauren McKechnie. I'm currently a sophomore in the College of Engineering at Cornell University. And this summer, I worked with Slack. So more specifically, I worked in the LCLS directorate, so that's the Line Out Coherent Light Source, in the TMO hutch, and my mentor was a physicist in this hutch, Razib Obaid, and this is what it stands for, the Time Resolved Atomic, Molecular Resolved Atomic, and Optical Science Instrument End Station. And so in general, the LCLS will use electrons accelerated to nearly the speed of light in order to generate beams of extremely bright X-ray laser light. And so studying these X-rays under all kinds of different experiments will help scientists explore many different types of scientific phenomena at the quantum level. And so that includes catalysis, photosynthesis, bond formation, or dissolution, which are basically processes that govern all chemical reactions. And so this right here is a photo of me and the machine that I'm about to talk about. Okay, so yeah, this summer I actually did a lot of Python and machine learning. So that was definitely something new to me. So that was a very fun experience. But essentially what I did was I built a surrogate model for the MRCO spectrometer, which is a machine that my mentor closely worked with and designed, actually. So it's basically just a multi-resolution. It's funny they call it a cookie box because I guess it sort of looks like one, I guess. But anyways, it's made up of 16 different electron time of flight spectrometers, all in a circular equiangular array. And then there's 4 extra ones on the sides at what they call a magic angle. And so the motivation of my project, my mentors and his team, they've been using a software called Simion. And so that software basically just calculates electron trajectories through different configurations of multi-lens system and all these different parameters that they can input for the, one example spectrometer. And so with this software, on the fly calculations are very, very hard to do because it just takes a lot of time to run a very specific simulation. And so therefore, my project, which is the surrogate model, it aimed to build this model in order to really facilitate on the fly calculations in an experiment setting. So things can be tuned on the spot when they need to be. And so this is kind of like right here, the photo below is a screenshot of the Simion
just an example of a semi-on trajectory simulation. So this is the inside of a spectrometer, and then right up on the top right is a CAD diagram of what one of those 20 spectrometers look like. And so electrostatic lens configuration, so that's one of those parameters that I was working heavily with. And then on the right, this is, as you can see, there's a lot of numbers involved with these blades. So I guess a little bit of background, there's 25 different copper blades positioned in the front of the spectrometers, and these kind of serve as a way to slow the electrons down in order to protect the sensor at the end of it, because because electrons, they're moving very, very fast and we need to slow them down. So each of these numbers are calculated and they're very unique per simulation. So that's another reason why it takes a long time to run these simulations and why a model will be very useful. So I actually hand typed all these in for the simulations for my data sets for the model. So that's just kind of what it looks like. And then here's a workflow diagram of kind of my whole process of this project. Here are the inputs. These are the parameters I was working with. The number of electrons was important. The kinetic energy distribution of each electron was important. And then also the Nelder-Mead retardation voltages. So those were the blades that I was talking about. And then as well as the elevation. So basically the angle at which these electrons are shot. So all these inputs go into 8 different semi-on simulations, and then I filter them out. I only keep the data that hit the sensor, and then I combine all the data together, and then I plotted actually I worked in a log space because it was just easier to do data analysis on. As you can see, everything's linear when I logged all the data. So here's a graph of the log of time of flight and the log of pass energy. And so essentially what I did was I computed a line of best fit with all these data points. It's around 240,000 data points, rows of data. So as you can tell, it definitely took a long time to run. So yeah, and then I used all these calculated residuals based off of this linear regression in order to predict time of flight residuals. So that was basically all the data that went into my model and training it. So I used a lot of Python in the model part of this, and also in the data analysis aspect too. And so here's just a training graph of what my model did when I ran it once. And as you can see, these mean squared errors are very low, which meant that my model correctly it was pretty useful in predicting these time of flight residuals, which was good. So anyways, what I really enjoyed learning the most from the Miss CEO sessions was the effective communication aspect of it. Projects are very big, and it's really important to divide these big projects into smaller ones and really to keep to task. And when you divide them well, it's easier to well document things and well document your progress, so you can effectively communicate everything that you learn to your team. And it's really important for this communication. And I learned, I feel like my big takeaway from one of these sessions was not underestimating your work when you're sharing with your mentor. If it took you a long time, then say it took you a long time. Like, say that you put all your work into it. And I think it's just really important for people to recognize your work, because you put your work into it, you put your time. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you Sage, thank you the Department of Energy, Lloyd, Julia, and Slack for making this happen.
Thank you, Lauren.
Let me know.
Great work. And thank you for sharing your experience. If you have a question for Lauren, please write them in the chat. I see a lot of conversation in the chat keep on. It's lovely to see them. So keep on doing. And then our last but not least, our speaker Melody.
Hi everyone, can you see my screen? Perfect. I am Melody Nguyen. I go to Pace University. I'll be a sophomore, and this year sorry. There we go. Okay, this year I worked in the electrical grid department where we worked on making the grid more resilient and more effective. And I worked on 2 different projects, and my main goal was to use marketing to increase the access and accessibility of renewable energy to pretty much all consumers. Okay, and for the first project, I was going to create a website or platform for any researchers and developers to use this new software. And one of the challenges that I had is that I've never coded before, so it's going to be a new experience, and it had to be compatible with a code management system called GitHub. So finding a static website that worked took a lot of trial and error, but I got through there. And then Test is a consumer product where you implement it to a house, and it would basically go through your electricity and find the most efficient and effective way to buy the electricity. That way you save energy. And my main goal was to explain it in a consumer playbook with the most simple terms. So how I did it over 3 weeks is finding a static site generator that would work. And this took a lot of trial and error. And I finally chose Jekyll. And what I did is I used VS Code to populate each of the content and then see different ways to do it. And then for Test, I revised the original playbook, which was a very long and lengthy Word document, into something that's very easy to digest and visually appealing. And then all the life lessons that I learned is that the best way to learn is to ask questions. If you're learning a new concept, the best way is to go out of your way. I talked to software engineers who helped me through each of the learning curves of coding for the first time. And all of it took a lot of times. I would set up a website and finally think I got there, and then it would not work, so I'd have to redo it. But all of it takes time, and it takes lots of trials. And now we have a fully functioning website, and I am going to be transitioning the user manual to the actual company. And now I know different coding skills like HTML, CSS, which is styling of a website, and then I use markdown files. So the very last steps is being able to expand the different ways we can get renewable energy to be easily used and applied to everyone, to make it affordable, and also training students from the very beginning how to use these softwares. That way, once they get into the working field, it's a lot applicable and it's a lot easier to use. And this fall, I'm happy to join back onto the team where I was offered an internship to create the brand and write a press release for our test project, as well as join the grid resilience and intelligence platform, which focuses on making all the electrical grids ready to go if there's extreme weather. And I'm super excited to make that happen too. So thank you to the Stage Journey who sponsored this and the Department of Energy.
Thank you very much, Melody. I know that she was offered a extension of her internship and her department, so congratulations and good luck for your year.
Thank you.
And Anna is saying, if you are a SAGE student from California, want to apply to an internship in New Mexico, you reach out to your California SAGE folks and we can help you. So yes, absolutely. You know, it's in a couple of months, it's gonna be time to prepare for the next summer internship. There are internship programs that request to apply very early, like in January. So it's important that you start at least thinking about it and see what you would like to do next summer. Good job, everyone. Big round of applause for all the speakers. You had a great experience. Thank you for taking the time to share your experience with us. And please stay in contact. The next Sage Live are going to be about the application, job, the college application and scholarship. And in October, we are gonna talk about internship. All the talks were amazing. Thank you everyone for connecting and sharing your experience, and stay in touch. We have this meeting will be available on our YouTube channel, and remember to follow our YouTube channel and also Instagram. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Have a great rest of the Sunday, and stay in touch.